hear them. So I'm Rachel, the CEO of Animal-Free Science Advocacy AFSA. I came along to the forum last year and was on a panel talking about what AFSA does in relation to lobbying into academia. And I've come back today to talk a little bit more broadly about animal use in research and teaching in Australia, what we do as an organisation and what you can do as individuals. Hopefully if I come back next time I'll be first off the ranks, because I think I'm quite emotional from hearing all the other presentations today, especially that one that was prior about the farm sanctuary. So hopefully I won't be in tears and we'll get through the presentation. Sorry. So for those of you who are not familiar with Animal-Free Science Advocacy, or AFSA, we're a not-for-profit charity. Our headquarters are in Melbourne. We have a very small team based in Melbourne, myself in Queensland and one part-time colleague in WA. Our vision is a future where no animals are harmed in the name of science, and scientific progress is advanced through animal-free research methods. So we are primarily a campaigning organisation. We have a range of campaigns from use of animals in dissection to transparency in animal research to primate research, and we serve as a resource on the issue. So we've got quite a comprehensive website for those people who are interested in this issue. We have a range of different briefings, reports, a podcast, bulletins on particular areas. We engage with different stakeholders, so that might be research institutions, universities, peak bodies, regulators, the media, students. And we really are trying to investigate and expose what is happening, because it's quite an industry lacking in transparency. So we might review research publications or file a freedom of information requests to try and find out about the research that is being conducted, and quite often with taxpayer funded. So I wanted to give a bit of an overview of how animals are used in research, and this is a more of a global overview, because there's different categories that they may be used in. And beyond these categories I'm going to talk about here, animals are also used for animal welfare research or environmental research or conservation research. The methods I'm going to be talking about now more relate to biomedical or life sciences research. So we have basic research, which might be the research conducted at universities, and that makes up the majority of research in Australia. So it might be looking at the mechanisms of underlying a disease using animals. And then we have use in teaching, so that might be in medical courses or animal science courses, veterinary courses, psychology courses, quite extensive. And then applied research, and that is looking into how to translate the basic research ideally into drugs or therapeutics. And then we have regulatory testing. So regulatory testing, I'm going to refer to my notes here because there's quite a lot under regulatory testing. So that is testing for the safety and efficacy of environmental impacts of products such as drugs, pesticides, chemicals, medical products, cosmetics, and medical devices. So that is research that may be mandated by particular guidelines. And with the regulatory testing, so before a drug reaches market, it's going to be going through a range of animal tests. It's not just one animal test. So I'm just going to detail a few of these particular tests. You have the acute toxicity test, 90-day toxicity test, reproductive toxicity, so that's looking at the next generation of an animal that's been used in the embryo and seeing the impacts there. Genotoxicity, so it's exposing an animal to a particular substance or chemical, and then testing the blood or bone marrow, looking at nerve damage, environmental damage. Often fish are used in this context to see if a product is administered to water, what the impact will be on the fish. And dogs are used to look at how drugs are absorbed, distributed, metabolized, and excreted. They're also used to observe how a drug is affecting vital systems such as organs and respiratory changes. So it's really quite extensive in terms of the regulatory testing. A lot of the regulatory testing in Australia is outsourced to other countries, so it's more the basic research that's taking place in Australia. And beyond those tests, there'll be other tests, for example, looking at vaccine batches to see if any of those have been contaminated, which use animals. So very comprehensive, unfortunately. And I wanted then to have a look at what the situation is in Australia more specifically. It's quite difficult to have an exact number or accurate picture of animal use in research in Australia because there isn't a comprehensive, consistent method of collating and publishing animal use in Australia. Each state and territory has their own system. So some states may be collating and publishing data, other states may collate it but not publish it, and some will do neither. So from what we can gather from when statistics were collated, approximately 10 million animals are used per year. Not all that number is used in invasive research. Some of it will be observational research or environmental research, for example. I would approximate it's probably between 3 and 5 million that are more biomedical, more invasive research. And that number makes Australia one of the world's highest users of animals for scientific purposes. The species used includes rodents, farm animals, fish, non-human primates, dogs, cats, and wildlife. And in terms of how it's legally managed, there is an Australian code for the care and use for animals for scientific purposes. Each state and territory translates that into their own legislation, and it's really a system of self-regulation where the Institute has an AEC and they decide whether the research meets that particular code definition. And there are various funders of research. There's the government funding, and the main ones there are the National Health and Medical Research Fund, Medical Research Future Fund, and the Australian Research Council, and then there's trusts and foundations, private universities, corporations, so quite extensive. So I wanted to move on to why AFSA's position is that animal experiments are not necessary. Clearly, we have an ethical objection to non-consenting sentient beings being used for research which doesn't assist the animal that's being used and is harmful. But increasingly, the scientific validity of animal models is being questioned. And put quite simply, it's really because of the differences between humans and animals, which can mean that what is taken from an animal study may not, in most circumstances, translate to humans. I'm going to try and play a video. This is from one of our advisors, Dr. Andrew Knight, and he's talking about primate research and the efficacy of primate research. And I think it's quite an interesting one because there's an assumption that because primates, non-human primates, are so close to humans that the results would translate, but that's not necessarily the case.
Research on non-human primates has proceeded since about the mid-20th century, particularly in domains such as the cognitive sciences, but also in attempting to study human diseases such as HIV and other viral diseases, cardiovascular diseases, and a range of other human diseases. The beneficiaries of this research are often assumed to be all of humanity. In one of my studies, I looked at all invasive chimpanzee research conducted around the world during a recent decade, and I found that around half of that research never went on to be used by any subsequent research as far as we could tell. A minority of the research did go on to be used, but almost all of that did not provide the contributions to the advancement of human healthcare that had actually been hoped. Other systematic reviews have found similar results since then. The vast majority of non-human primate research, unfortunately, doesn't go on to produce the human healthcare benefits that have been hoped for. Our recent scientific article describes the problems that are associated with the utilitarian ethical frameworks commonly used to govern non-human primate research and proposes various solutions to those.
So I wanted to move on to talk about some of the methods that can be used in place of animals. So we have in vitro methods, so by that I mean human-derived cells or tissues that can be used as a substitute for animals. So we have little mini organs called organoids, or organ on a chip, for example, or we can do 3D bioprinting. In silico models, which is essentially computer modelling, so we can predict what the response will be to a particular chemical based on chemical properties of similar chemicals, for example. And another example is studies with human volunteers. So that might be data derived from humans. It can be post-mortem studies. It can be microdosing a minuscule amount of a substance to humans and assessing that. We also have simulators, so they can be used, for example, in training surgeons. And I wanted to point out a couple of resources we have which give far more comprehensive picture of the animal-free methods. We've got a report, Better Ways to Do Research, which is on our website. I've left a copy out there as well. It's under our previous branding of Humane Research Australia, but really gives a lot of detail about the different animal-free methods. We've also got on our website a business case for NAMs, and by NAMs I'm meaning non-animal models, which gives context to how they've been used overseas and gives as I said, a business case for the government to adopt these methods in terms of wasted funding towards animal methods and where it can be better redirected. And I'm not a researcher myself, so I think it's helpful to play maybe a couple of videos that explain some of these methods in greater detail, and probably give them better justice than I do.
This is the idea of replacing animal studies for drug testing, for example, with little microengineered devices that are lined by human cells and reconstitute organ-level functions.
One of the things that the pharmaceutical industry is finding is that they're having very high failure rates, and often it's because the animal models being used to develop these drugs are not predictive of the human situation.
It's very expensive to perform animal studies and also time-consuming.
Whereas here we have models that can potentially better predict the human situation.
It's called human breathing lung chip, and this device mimics the breathing human lung.
There's human airway cells from the air sac. On the membrane that's porous, on the other side of the membrane are human capillary and blood vessels. So there's air on one side, there's flowing medium with human blood cells in it, like blood on the other side, on the capillary side, and then the whole thing stretches and relaxes just like our lung does when we breathe.
And we mimic various types of physiological responses to drugs, toxins, or various types of materials that we encounter on a daily basis.
So this would be very useful because it's human relevant, because we would be using human cells.
And I think the beauty of this technology is so easy and straightforward that a lot of people can use it without getting trained, especially biologists, clinicians, chemists, who don't have any engineering background. This technology is accessible to them.
Much cheaper than using animal models to see the size. You need very little compound. So this would not only be more predictive, but have higher turnaround times. You can screen using much smaller amounts of the drugs too. So more predictive and more practical.
But we also have kidney on a chip, bone marrow on a chip, peristaltic gut on a chip, and we're just going on organ to organ and hopefully integrating it in a little microsystem. We link the heart that beats to the lung that breathes. We're getting great interest in the pharmaceutical industry, and we hope to announce our first alliance to use those to see if we can indeed replace some animal studies to accelerate the drug development process and decrease costs.
This institute is by far the greatest and best working environment for bioengineering research, and can predict the behavior or response of these cells or the body to, for example, drugs more precisely. I think that's where the promise is.
And the next short video I'm going to play is one of the in silico methods.
Virtual Physiological Human Institute presents Digital Twin, the journey towards better healthcare. What if you could have an identical twin? Someone who breathes, moves, and reacts like you. Someone who can help you get better when you're ill. Your life will be safer and healthier, right? Engineers, biologists, and doctors are working together to create a digital twin that can be used to test your medical treatments, simulating how your body will react to them. This is possible only by understanding the way organs work and are connected in the body and how diseases progress. The most advanced scientific knowledge will then be translated into a digital copy of you. This is in silico medicine, a personalized and precise approach that uses computers to improve understanding, prevention, diagnosis, and treatment of diseases to find the best options for every one of us. With the help of your digital twin, your doctor can gather precise insights into your specific medical condition and obtain increased confidence regarding the best treatment to use. The digital twin complements the current available tests, making the healthcare system faster, cheaper, and less risky. It also reduces the unnecessary use of drugs. It makes your costly hospital stays shorter and expedites your recovery. This greater efficiency translates into the opportunity for doctors of having more time available to spend with you and build and maintain a relationship of trust. That's why the digital twin represents a true ally to guarantee a better, less expensive and tailored healthcare for you and the entire population.
I also recommend for anyone who's interested in watching, anyone who's interested in seeing any other videos, there's an organisation, Medicine Without Cruelty. They've got a YouTube channel and they've got quite a few quite informative videos. They were just a little bit long for the purposes of this presentation, but they're really great as well. So I wanted to have a quick mention of what AFSA's priorities are, what we're working on currently. The first one is code review. So as I mentioned, there's one particular code which regulates animal research in Australia. It was last updated in 2013, so over 10 years old, and the NHMRC, National Health and Medical Research Council, have announced that that's being reviewed. So that will be quite an extensive project to be involved in the consultation of that code, because there's many ways it can be improved in terms of it's very ambiguous in its language. There's some animals that are not protected that should be, many other areas where it can be improved. So we will be providing guidance for those people who want to make submissions when they open. We also have an emphasis on trying to get the government to commit to funding grant program or scholarships or investment of a centre for non-animal research methods, because that's really what's needed to drive that method and the validation and use of non-animal methods. And we're seeing that overseas. There's quite large amounts of money being redirected into that area, but in Australia we have, in New South Wales, there is a non-animal technologies network, and that was given some government funding, but other than that there's nothing at a federal level. And regulatory testing is another focus for us, as I mentioned, for drugs, chemicals or veterinary drugs. We work as part of different international coalitions when there's different international guidelines on those which will be adopted by Australia, trying to amend those guidelines so that animal-free methods can be accepted in lieu of animal data. One of our other focuses is primate research. So in Australia, marmosets, macaques, owl monkeys in Queensland, and baboons in New South Wales are used in research. There's a variety of ways they're used in xenotransplantation, which is transplanting cells from another species into primates. HIV research, a lot of neurological research, for example. We had a campaign that was launched last year, Honour Me with a Name, which was highlighting the individual stories of primates that have been used in research across Australia, which we took from research publications or FOI requests. The next focus of the campaign will be trying to change this particular guidelines in Australia, which exempt large primates, so baboons, gorillas, for example, or chimpanzees from being used in research on account of their kind of advanced intelligence or sentience, and we will be advocating for the same to be extended to all primates. Other priorities are, while animal research is existing, trying to strengthen the oversight. So as I mentioned, through the code reform, at the moment, each institution that conducts research has an animal ethics committee. We have resources to try and assist those animal ethics committees to try and have more resources that they can reject certain protocols. We're quite active if each state and territory is reviewing their legislation. We have host of recommendations that can be put forward to ban certain procedures or mandate that alternatives are used or funding being made available for non-animal methods, for example. And we also have a campaign focused on trying to increase transparency because there's no national reporting system. We don't see the same things that we've seen in other countries where you might see how many infringements have been issued or plain language summaries of which is what has been funding or how much funding has been directed to non-animal research method versus animal methods, and that information is just not available here. So the next question, big one, are we making progress? And I'd say it's quite a slow-moving issue, but we have seen some progress, quite a lot of it in the last couple of years as well. So there's two particular procedures. The forced swim test, I don't know how many people are aware of here. Is anyone aware of that test here? Yep, most people. It's a test to assess the effectiveness of antidepressants with a rodent being placed into a beaker, and the amount of time which they take to stop trying to swim is supposed to be an indication of how effective the antidepressant is. And the smoke exposure is where mice are attached to a tube, and then the tube is attached to a smoke machine, so they're inhaling cigarette smoke to study cigarette-related diseases. So both those particular tests have been prohibited in New South Wales, and the main funding body has adopted positions that restrict the funding of those, so that was some progress. We've also seen the funding allocation I mentioned in New South Wales with the Non-Animal Technologies Network. There was an inquiry in WA about their medical research funding, and one of the recommendations that came from that was that they need to invest in non-animal research methods, so we're following up to see if that recommendation will be followed through. The CSIRO released a report, it was about 2 years ago now, looking at non-animal models and how they're used in drug development, and had a host of recommendations which we're advocating to be accepted, which are really government investment in that area for economic reasons. We've seen developments overseas. In the US, their main drug approval body, their FDA, they passed a Modernisation Act which means that non-animal methods can be accepted in lieu of animal methods. And we've seen some other developments recently in the States in terms of the National Institutes of Health and the FDA, which are in favour of non-animal research methods. So we're really trying to capitalise on that in Australia as well. Definitely seeing a bit more events and symposia in Australia with an interest in non-animal research methods. And from AFSA's perspective, I think increased engagement on the issue. If we release something, for example, we're getting a bit more traction on it than we were in the past. So I think it's becoming a bit more topical again. But despite those advances, we still hear of some pretty shocking research, which is quite hard to believe has been accepted by an Animal Ethics Committee. So this example here was from a publication published in January of this year. It was Monash University. They're looking at intimate partner violence and traumatic brain injury, and then in quick succession to strangulation, and looking at blood biomarkers related to that. But they are subjecting rats to the traumatic brain injury and the strangulation. And we've got, obviously, I'm sure it's not news to the audience here, but very serious concerns about that research having been approved. It was done in parallel with human data studies, so we didn't think there's any need to be conducting the animal studies. There was a host of scientific reasons in terms of the force that was applied to the rats not being equivalent to humans, the fact that intimate partner violence may involve PTSD and affect the biomarkers, and just not replicating a condition like that in rats at all. Other than the animal welfare and ethical concerns as well. And this first paper, I think, was over $1 million of taxpayer funding as well for this research. And since this, we've established that Monash University has conducted further research using this. The next paper was trying to use this while the rats were pregnant and then seeing if it affected the behaviour of the offspring. And I'm sure it's just going to be a case of they've established this model which they feel they validated. They'll wish to do more publications. They'll want to extend it and train other people in using this method. They'll want to develop another animal model of it, and here it continues. So it's very depressing to think that this has been approved in Australia, and actually an institution which has set up this particular research and now trying to spearhead it globally, which is quite a prominent university. So we have been quite active in opposing this. We have an action on our website. We've been writing to the publishers, the Animal Welfare Victoria, to the university, to the Animal Ethics Committee, to the funders. And we have one public action. I think we'll be broadening that pretty soon. So keep opposing these particular types of research. But I think it's really an indication that we need to change the code, because if we don't, it will just be a case of an institution has the discretion to approve the research which they see ticks all their boxes, and that's what they found this to be. So in terms of what you can do, I've put a QR code here, and obviously this presentation will be made available for those who can't access the QR code now. One thing I wanted to highlight was our conscientious objection policy, sample policy. That's in case anyone here is studying and there's been a requirement to use animals in the study. We have a sample conscientious objection policy for universities. So under the code I mentioned, universities have to provide a conscientious objection policy, but quite often from what we've reviewed, it might just be a couple of lines and it's part of a broader policy, or it's not well enforced, or it's very unclear, or it's really a policy saying you can't object if it's going to disrupt the course or our fellow students or something to that effect. So we've put together one that's quite comprehensive, meets kind of the university policy standards, but has a clearer process on what students should expect from the university in terms of conscientious objection. And for those who aren't exactly sure what I'm meaning by conscientious objection, it means the refusal to participate in a specific activity based on deeply held ethical, moral, religious, cultural, or scientifically reasoned beliefs. So other actions you can take, attend our events. We occasionally have in-person events, but because we're a national organisation, it tends to be online ones, so we'll have supporter webinars about every 3 months. Always look for the leaping logo, bunny logo when you're making household products or cosmetic products. That's cruelty-free international accredited. If you're thinking about donating to medical research, we have a humane charities list, so that ensures your donation isn't going to be funding medical research. Most of the humane charities list, I would say, are more service or support organisations than research organisations by default, but you can search them by disease area, for example. You might want to consider participating in human research studies. We have some information about this on our website. Again, it's something to still be cautious about, because I have seen some studies where I've looked to participate in, and then when you read through the details of it, you see the objective of that research is then to develop an animal model. So you have to ask some questions before doing so, but there's a range of things. I've done some where it's just collating like flu data, and I've done other ones where it's MRI scanning or different things, so that's something else you can do. A bit morbid, but you can consider after passing away if you want to donate your body to science, because some post-mortem research can be valuable. More pleasant one, adopt or foster an animal that's been previously used in research. So in Australia, there's at least 2 organisations that are rehoming dogs, cats and small animals from research, so you can either put your name down to foster or adopt those animals. I'd say another thing to do is stay informed on the issue so you can talk about it to other people. We have an e-news which you can subscribe to on our website that comes out once a month. We also have a podcast. We've had a range of different guests on the podcast. I think it's quite diverse, from researchers, kind of legal experts. We've had a robotic surgeon on there, an organisation that rehomes animals from research. It's really some quite interesting episodes there. And yeah, share this information with others. For our campaigns on our website, you'll see there's usually an allied action to each campaign, so it might be writing to a government body, for example. We'll generally have template emails that you can send. We also do case studies, so we do case studies of animal research that has been conducted in Australia and non-animal research, so both positive and negative. And for the animal research, we will give an explanation on why we felt that research wasn't justified, so if it was particularly cruel, or it was replicating existing knowledge, or invalid in a particular way. So, and that again, most of those case studies will lead to an action that you can take usually to the university that conducted the research. You can become a member, so we have an annual membership. It just means you can be a bit more involved, potentially be on our committee, for example, because we're a membership organisation. We also have animal membership, so symbolic animal membership for your pets. And my dog has a membership, or fundraise or donate. I also wanted to give a couple of suggestions for further reading for those who are interested in this subject. The first one, Rat Trap by Pandora Pound, I think it was released last year. It's a really great book. It's talking about kind of a history of why animal models came to be accepted in medical research and what we can do to break free from that paradigm. We also have an interview with the author Pandora Pound on our podcast as well. She talks about the book and what motivated her to write it. And the second one, Animal Experimentation, Working Towards a Paradigm Change, is a great book. You can actually get that one as a free ebook. It's very long, but really, really informative on a whole range of areas related to animals in research. We have on our website recommended videos and documentaries and talks and so on. One that has just come out, which I'm halfway through watching, it's called, I'm trying to remember, it's on Amazon Prime. It's called Under the Bunker. It's about a undercover investigation into a Spanish contracting research organisation, Vivotecnia, which was released about 2 or 3 years ago, and it's in Spanish, but obviously put your subtitles on, but it's quite hard-hitting, but it gives a bit of a glimpse of what the animals are subjected to. So like everyone else, I've got a quote here. Animal testing, including vivisection, only tests the ability of the human being to be inhuman. And I just wanted to thank everyone for their time and everyone for all the advocacy that you're doing. And it's very inspiring to hear everyone's doing. I like this particular quote. Ultimately, the world will be destroyed by a lot of good people doing nothing. So it's really nice to be in an environment where that's not the case and everyone is doing what they can. So thank you, everyone. And also my inspiration here, one of my beagles, Ava. So I'll put it in her dedication. I do have 2 other beagles as well, but they're both rescued from research facility, and you have to sign a disclosure agreement that you won't use their images publicly. So we just have to take my word for it that they're as cute as she is. Thank you, everyone. Open to any questions.
With like beauty products and food products, not that that's mostly focus here. With like the import into China issues and things like that, where they require more, like do we have kind of a method forward for restricting those products in Australia, like an end goal?
For like exporting to China, you mean?
A lot of the products that are animal tested are required by law in other countries.
Oh, okay, yeah.
How do we argue that here, or is our only option voting with our dollars sort of thing?
Yep, I mean, the government here would still allow a drug to be, or a product to be imported if it'd been tested on animals. It just couldn't be retested here. So I think the only way you can really avoid that is choosing the cruelty-free international logo, because that the restriction on animal test data for cosmetics here is only on the testing here. It's not on if it's been tested before it's been imported, unfortunately.
Also, we were just discussing it before. Do you know what the Oreo thing was? Like, there was talk about it, like there was some animal testing involved in that parent company.
In which one, sorry?
He mentioned it, it was last year. Oreo, the parent company of Oreo was doing some kind of animal testing.
I don't know that one. I wouldn't be surprised. They maybe have done something like, I don't know, if you eat to excess on them, what the impact is, or something like that, or I don't know that particular example, but they do testing for food products as well, especially if it's a new additive or a new chemical or something like that, then it would be tested. Yeah.
What's the disclosure when you adopt a dog with malaria?
So it would depend on the institution, but typically when you rehome them through a rehoming organisation, they have an arrangement with that institution that they can disclose that it was used in research, but they won't tell you which institution or what it was used for, and you can't use the photos on social media or show them publicly. So,
can you tell the story, or you just won't know?
I haven't been told it, so I don't know their circumstances at all. So I tried to try and find out a little bit, because when they came, they had medication and it came from a particular vet, so I was trying to see which company could it be that it's close to that vet, but I would only be guessing. So I imagine they were probably used for veterinary-based research, but it's very unclear, because when you see the statistics of animal use in Australia, they report animal and human biology together, so you can't see the composition of how much are being used in animal testing for veterinary products and how much are being used for animal products. So when you see dogs used, it will just be that one broad category. So, yeah. Oh, there's a couple there and one at the back.
Do you do anything around alternatives to animal reagents used in bovine serum or stem cells?
Yeah. We don't do a great deal on it. The only thing we do is that we have a resource on alternatives to fetal calf serum. So we just provide a directory of different agents that can be used in place. So we don't do much on it other than providing that resource for those who may be searching for something.
What is that alternative?
Oh, I think I don't know, I'm not very good at explaining it, but I think they can get they call it recombinant. It's like another way of, creating them without using any animal products. Yeah.
So the ones
Yeah, they can get from a catalogue of created ones. So, but there'll be, if you have a look on our website, we do have quite a few links to different directories on that. That's as much as we do. But it was quite interesting, because at one point on our website, when we look at our statistics, our fetal calf serum page was the most viewed page, and I think it was because people kept going on there thinking they could buy fetal calf serum from our website. So there's obviously interest in Australia for people wanting to buy it. Yeah. Yeah, that was. I assume that was the reason why that was our most popular kind of page and search term. Now, obviously, people are going to that. We're almost wanting them to go to, if they search for fetal calf serum, to then be diverted to our website and see the alternatives of it. But no, we don't sell anything. It was just we were realising that a lot of people have been looking for it because it was our most searched for and most popular web page. But now we kind of use that to the advantage that anyone who's looking for it is diverted to that page with the alternatives. Yeah.
Do you know if the alternatives to animal testing, are they used significantly at the moment, or is it like you would make an analogy between scientific research use of animals versus dietary use? Are the alternatives fully deep in the market already, or is it these are new technologies?
Yeah, I think.
Really big news, right?
Yeah, some of them are obviously some of them have been around at least 20 years and not as new, but when we try and establish how much of the government funding is going towards animal versus non-animal methods, it seems to be, at least from the NHMRC, about 40% for animal-based research and then about 60% for the animal-free methods. In terms of the new technologies, I would say probably we see in Australia the kind of organoids and organ on a chip being used more often, but still there's still cases where cancer research or other things where it's still the kind of norm to use mice and induce a tumour on the mouse rather than use non-animal research methods. So still a long way to go.
Along a similar tangent, when thinking about the flu vaccine, the testing that goes on there, and the fact that you can get vegan versions of that, but it's not, you need to really find it, if you get what I mean. Like, have you thought about, or are you approaching like clinics and all those sorts of things that do administer those flu vaccines and asking them to have those in stock as an option?
So the vegan flu vaccines, you mean trying to get them to have it in stock that hasn't been tested on animals as well as the flu? Yeah.
You really only have one option when you walk into these places.
Yeah.
And for me personally, I've got to have it for my job.
Yeah.
Fired, so.
Yeah. Yeah, I think even with the vegan version, they would at this point in Australia be very unlikely that they could have got that approved without animal-free research. It's kind of a strange situation in Australia that Therapeutic Goods Agency, they don't have anything in the legislation that says everything has to be tested in animals, but they have different guidelines, and most of those guidelines imply that animals have to be used, and they would have to provide a case for non-animal-free methods to be used. And a lot of companies don't want to do that because it's just not clear enough, or they think we'll get to the final stage and it won't be approved. So that's one of the things we're working on with the TGA, to actually have clear examples of, have you had any drugs that have we have some examples on our website, but they're not completely eliminating animals. They've just been a reduction in some of the tests. So they have expressed publicly that they are open to non-animal-free methods being available, but there isn't any evidence of them actually accepting it or what the specific pathway is. It's quite vague. They'll say, oh, if it's something's been approved and you want to put it into a new kind of format, you may not have to use animals, or if you've got literature or it's been approved by another country, we'll accept it, but not anything beyond that that's specific enough for a drug company to risk trying to get it approved. So that's one of the big projects, trying to work with them to get that much more streamlined, and have sessions where they showcase non-animal methods and how they could be approved, or provide free services for drug sponsors on discussing those at a really early stage so they can get approved.
Well, I'm sorry, Jess, but we might have to wrap up there.
Yeah.
Rachel, cool. So,
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.